I'm going to start out and I'm going to tell you something about myself that you might not know. It's not intended to be a brag, okay? But I have significant farming experience, okay? As we talk about harvesting, the properties across the river, it's over in Illinois. It's mostly apples and peaches, okay? But in fact, we've got a picture here. Let's see, we've got a picture here of my daughter and I. This is when she was little on the farm. This is obviously way back because my hair is much browner. But you gotta get a sense of, I gotta tell you, like, if you didn't know it, just so you know, farming, not easy, okay? Farming is not easy. I can kind of almost, in my mind, picture like the ground rutted, almost spraining my ankle because of where the tractor tires have gone, looking at the dry ground, sun beating on you. Just here's what's going through my mind most of the time is, man, I wish I'd brought more sunscreen. It's hot. Farming is hard. I wish you could kind of be there with me, because here's what you would see here's how hard it is. Did you ask me how hard is it? How hard is it, Pastor? Thank you for asking. Thank you for asking. Here's how hard, because you've got to clear the fields. Not easy, especially depending on how long it's been since they've been cultivated. You got to buy the seed. Seed, my friends, expensive. Farming's expensive, by the way. Costs a lot. You've got to plant the seed. That's not easy. You got to water the seed. Irrigation, the equipment. You ever see like the irrigation systems? Very expensive. Everything farming-wise is very expensive. In fact, if you just buy the tractor, a Deere like 400 horsepower, like a 8RT John Deere, $400,000 to $600,000, and they go up to like $1 million for these tractors if you get like a 9RX 830 or something. Very expensive. Now here's another picture. Let's show this next picture. This one looks staged. It looks like something from like Yellowstone or something, right? But it's not. I promise you. My mother-in-law just took this picture. That's obviously long ago because my son is much younger there. And maybe you're looking at that. See, because that makes it look very cool and pristine, okay? It's actually very hard and ugly and sweaty and challenging. And maybe you're thinking, well, why would you do it then? Why do you do it? Here's why. Because it's rewarding. It is so rewarding, especially like when you finally, like you bite into that apple, and you taste that really juicy peach. It's so rewarding. In fact, I have a picture. The next picture is my wife and son. Here they're picking some apples. Let's go to this next one. There they are, picture. And if you zoom in here, zoom in on the next. Let's go to the next slide. You can zoom in. You can see that. Yeah, the bag, it's Eckert's. All of my farming experience, if I'm being honest, is limited to Eckert's. Okay. And here's why you're laughing. Here's why you're laughing. You're laughing because you know that just because I go to Eckert's doesn't make me a farmer, right? Just because farming there's so much more than just what I'm doing at Eckert's. You know what I'm saying? Just because I went to Eckert's and picked some apples, it doesn't make me a farmer. I'm literally just reaping the rewards of what somebody else has sown, right? All their hard work. They've done all the hard work. I'm just kind of showing up at the end. You'd never think I'm a farmer just because I went to Eckert's. You'd never think like I had been that guy, right? I did not earn the cowboy hat. I did not earn the boots. They were bought at, right, probably Zillow or not Zillow, Zappos, right? Now I want you to think about this. Ready? I actually pay money to Eckert's to go pick apples. I actually pay them to go harvest their apples and their peaches. Why do that? I mean, why not just go? I could go to Schnucks and buy the apples. That's not that hard to do. I could just go to Schnucks and buy the fruit. Here's why. Two things, and this is going to be our focus. These two things for the message. Number one, harvesting is enjoyable. I go to Eckert's and I pay the money and I drag the family along because harvesting is enjoyable. That's thing number one we're going to talk about. But thing number two is harvesting is more than just the partaking. Okay, it is. It's more than me just eating the fruit. If it was just eating the fruit, I'd go to Schnucks. I'd swing by Aldi. I can get fruit there. But harvesting, it's more than just, there's more to it than that. And so those are the two things we're going to talk about. And there are kind of two false assumptions underneath each of these. The first false assumption is that we have to do a bunch of hard work in harvesting. We're doing all the hard work, right? That's not true. It's actually enjoyable. The second false assumption is that the only goal of harvesting is the partaking. That's not true either, right? Like I said, harvesting is more than just the partaking. So I want to talk about each of these. First, let's talk about the fact that harvesting is enjoyable. I think when many people hear our text and God says, Jesus says, hey, pray, we need some people out in the harvest. Pray to the Lord of the harvest to send some people. We're thinking that being a laborer in the harvest is going to be laborious. We think it's going to be like, I'm not up for that. I just don't have the energy. I got a full-time job. I don't know what you need from me, God. I am not sure if I can do this. Do you know how hard it is to get somebody to come to church with you? I mean, really. Maybe you're thinking this, like as you're reading the text, go be a laborer in the harvest, you're thinking, Pastor, I have argued with my sister for years, and she still will not come to church with me. Right? Or I have debated with my brother-in-law about religion at every holiday for the last number of years, and he won't even come to Easter or Christmas. Harvesting sounds like a lot of hard work. And here's why I'm you, right? We maybe don't want to harvest. Maybe we're thinking this. That's not my job. That's literally not in my wheelhouse. That's why you're paid, Pastor. This is what you get the big bucks. By the way, that was a joke. Please know that, right? This is your job. I mean, I'm supposed to do whatever. Especially here's why. Because, Pastor, first of all, I'm not good at the harvest because I don't know my Bible backwards and forwards. Maybe you're thinking that. I don't know doctrinal whatever of denominations. Maybe you're thinking, this might be the primary deterrent. You're thinking that you've got to engage in some political arguments. If you're going to talk about religion, because society has screwed this up and intermingled these two things unnecessarily. Or maybe you're thinking, this is the hardest part, just the practical nature of the invite to church. Like you think you got to perfectly thread the needle, like being assertive, giving an invite, yet also somehow being so kind as to not scare them off. All that sounds like a hard work, and it might be, but here's the good news. You don't have to do any of that. You don't have to do it perfectly. Because here's the truth. Being a laborer in the harvest, it doesn't have to feel laborious because God's done all the hard work. All of the hard work for saving people, God has already done. And he says, here's what he says in Titus. The grace of God has appeared in Jesus Christ, and he's already made salvation available to everyone. You're not responsible for saving anybody. He says this to the people in Corinth. He reminds us that it's God who's responsible for growing faith in people. It's not us. That's not our job. See, the hard work's already done, and it wasn't done by us. Here's what the text says. Our text says he wants laborers for the harvest. Just the harvest. We're basically it's like showing up at Eckert's. You know what I'm saying? We're not doing everything that's upstream of that. It doesn't say, here's what the text doesn't say. He doesn't say, listen, people, the ground's pretty overgrown, okay? The hardest work has to be done, and I need you to do it. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say like, these seeds, they're not going to plant themselves. This is the worst part. I need some people willing to step up. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, I've already done all the hard work. Listen, it's the harvest. It's the best, most beautiful part. Come, be a part of this. See, we get to be used by God in the harvest, but we're not responsible for the things that God's responsible for. Things like clearing the fields. He's the one dealing with sin in people's lives. He's doing that. Planting the seed, making people believe, that's him. Nurturing their faith, not on us. Now, He might use you and me instrumentally, right? We're the tool he's using. But God's got the responsibility, which is why he gets the glory. See, he's got the responsibility, which is why when it happens, he gets the glory. We don't have the hardest work. Jesus did the hardest work. Jesus did the hard work. Let's see. What's the hard work that he did that we can't do? He lived a sinless life. I can't check that box. There's a pretty high price. I mean, I thought Eckert's was expensive, but he was tortured and killed. He did, well, we can't even attempt this, raise ourselves from the dead. See, he did all of the hard work that was necessary for people's salvation. The only thing that's left is the harvest. And harvesting's the best part. And unlike when I harvested Eckert's, which is, by the way, surprisingly expensive. I mean, it's like $1,000 a pound for an apple there. Slight hyperbole. Maybe 100. Unlike that, even if God uses us, the price to us is not that much. The price to us is not that much. We should be willing to pay a higher price than we normally are willing to pay to be a part of this harvest. So we're blessed. Here's the deal. God did all the hard work. He paid the price so that we now get to participate in this amazing and enjoyable harvest. Like I said, there are two things I want to talk about. Okay, first, harvesting is about enjoying the entire process and experience, all right? Which brings me to my second false assumption we often make, that the only enjoyable part of the harvest is the partaking. Remember, the first false assumption was that we have to do all the hard work. Not true. God did it. No, we just get to enjoy the harvest. But the second false assumption is that the harvest is only the partaking. That's the whole point of the harvest. Also not true. See, I think sometimes we believe that the only goal of the harvest is that one moment of experience. So we got a picture. Here's a picture of my son. This is him at that time. He's mouth full of apple. And we think like his mouth full of apple. Like this is the point, right? Just that's what it's all about. This is the harvest. If this is what it was about, just go to Aldi. You don't have to go to Eckert's. You can get that experience at Schnucks. See, but the harvest is bigger than that. It's bigger than partaking. There's more enjoyment to be had from harvesting than just partaking. And here's where I'm going with this. In the church, we can often think that harvesting, here's what we think it is. Harvesting means we've gotten someone to go to church with us. We make getting someone to go to church with us the equivalent of eating the apple, right? Like that's the moment. That's the point of the harvest. We can think that's the only goal. That's the only enjoyable part of the harvest. Not true. We can treat everything prior to somebody walking through the church doors as just like instrumental, something to be endured. Not true. Here's the truth. The harvest doesn't start or end when somebody comes into the church building. Every faith-filled conversation and interaction is an enjoyable part of the harvest. This is why I'm begging you, I'm encouraging you, try this. Go talk to people about your faith. It's actually enjoyable. Every conversation we have, that's a part of the harvest. God's using us to grow faith. See, this is the goal of the harvest. It's not for the person to show up with their butt in the chairs on Sunday morning. It's to grow faith. And that happens before Sunday morning and it happens after Sunday morning. It's a process. It's not a moment. And it's all fun. It's enjoyable. I'm not just talking about those rare, trust me, I've had those rare moments where somebody shows up to church that you've asked and you're like, what? What are you doing here? I'm totally unprepared for God to actually do this. But it's all amazing. It's so fun. And over the last few years, let me just tell you something about myself. I'm really bad about not living in the now, living in the future. Right? I'm really bad about not enjoying the moment because I'm always like thinking about whatever's coming later on that day. And so I'm working the last couple of years about just living in the moment and appreciating every conversation as an end in and of itself. In other words, if I meet you, I'm not like talking to you and thinking, oh, I hope I get him to come to church, right? Or if I get you to come to church, I'm not talking to you at church like, oh, I hope I can get you to serve. I'm trying to not do that. I'm trying to just let every conversation be an ends in and of itself, not a means to some future ends. And here's why this matters. As you talk with people about your faith, that's an end in and of itself. That's the harvest going on right there. That's the harvest. As you talk to people about your faith, you are an answer to somebody else's prayer who prayed to the Lord of the harvest to send workers into the harvest. You see this? Someone had been praying for you, for somebody to talk to that person about their faith, and now you are an answer to that person's prayer. That conversation is part of the harvest, and it gets even better. Oh, people, it gets so good. Here's how it gets better. Is because that conversation is beneficial and beautiful and faith-growing for that person. But they don't just benefit, you do. See, God's working through each of these moments to grow their faith and ours, meaning this: we are simultaneously both the harvester and the harvested. Let me say it again. We are simultaneously harvester and harvested, because God didn't just create that person, love that person, and die and rise for that person. No, God created and loves and died and rose for you too. God wants to harvest all He's cultivated, to include you. He's planted and grown seeds of faith in you. And this means that you're not just out there harvesting. No, those moments, God is actually harvesting you too. He's growing your faith. Just to recap, 2 points. Ready? Here we go. Pop quiz. First, we don't have to do all the hard work in harvesting. God's done all the hard work. God in Christ has done that. We just get to be used as a part of the harvest. It's the most enjoyable part. Trust me. The harvest is enjoyable, okay? But, second point, it's more than just the partaking. The whole thing is enjoyable. That means that harvesting doesn't primarily take place in this moment on Sunday mornings. Harvesting primarily takes place when? In about 20 minutes when we leave here. But before we go, let me clarify one thing. Okay, one thing. I always want to talk with nuance. Don't want to oversimplify. I want to clarify. None of what I've said is to imply that harvesting is never challenging in any way. Not true. If you've been to Eckert's or whatever, it's not every apple is the same amount of easiness to pick. Some apples are higher than others. Some apples you got to work and climb for, and there's a special picker tool you got to get. They're not all eye level, okay? It doesn't mean the fruit's all equally easy to pick. Some, my friends, some apples, some peaches are harder to reach than others. And so in harvesting, the fruit's not always at eye level, and the same is true with people. Some people are going to be harder to reach. Some people in your life are going to be harder to reach. But we're still blessed to be laborers in this enjoyable harvest. So my friends, you're loved. You're sent. You are sent out to be a laborer in this harvest. You don't come to this place on Sunday morning to harvest. You leave this place. You're sent from this place to harvest. And I pray that this week, here's my prayer. I pray that you enjoy the harvest this week, knowing this: you're both the harvester and the harvested. Amen.